My brother filed a restraining order before he called me. Security escorted me out of his building before he spoke to me. He had prepared for my arrival before I arrived. Someone had told him I was coming. This is the family I grew up in. I want to start with the Wednesday. Not the Sunday she disappeared. Not the 2 years after. Not the therapy or the new job or the wedding or the child. The Wednesday, 18 months ago. Because that's when the second collapse began, and everything I'm going to tell you needs that Wednesday as its frame. I, Andrew, 46M, work as a cross-domain analyst for a government agency. Background verification, property analysis, character assessment, cross-referencing data across jurisdictions and departments and databases that don't normally talk to each other. I chose this work deliberately. My therapist would tell you it was about restoring a sense of control over reality after losing it completely, and she'd be right, though I'd have said it differently at the time. I'd have said I liked the precision of it, the way data doesn't lie if you know how to read it, the way patterns emerge when you look across enough domains simultaneously. I am very good at this work. On Wednesday, I was processing a routine loan application. A family overseas applying for property financing in the UK. Standard verification, cross-referencing identity documents, financial history, property records. The kind of file I process 20 times a week without particular attention. The applicant was my brother. I registered this with the specific flatness of someone whose brain is still processing what their eyes have seen. My brother Matthew, who moved overseas 11 years ago when a work opportunity presented itself, who I speak to rarely, who I love in the careful, qualified way of siblings who grew up in the same house and became different people, and have maintained the relationship at a comfortable distance. I was never close to him, but we were normal, mature, and respected each other's presence like roommates. I figured it out when I put my mind to it now. My brother's loan application. I kept reading. His wife's name was different from any name I knew. Her surname was his. Her photograph was in the documentation. Her face was unmistakable. I want to say that simply because it is simple. The face of someone you loved for 5 years in high school and another 5 years after doesn't become unrecognizable. Not in 11 years. Not ever. I sat at my desk for a long time. Then I closed the file, went to the washroom and splashed cold water on my face, came back. Then I opened it again. I looked at her face in a government loan document for my brother's property application, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time arrive in my body, like something returning from a very long distance. I went to the bathroom again. I sat on the floor for a while, not crying, just sitting. The specific sitting of someone whose understanding of their own history has just been revised without their permission. Then I went back to my desk. I referred the file to a colleague, citing a personal conflict of interest. I drove home. And then I went back. All the way back. Her name was Kavya. I changed the name for obvious reasons, and yet needed to say her name because she deserves to be named even now. Especially now, even after everything. We met at 15. The specific meeting of two people who find each other in the way school friendships find each other, through proximity, and then through something more, the gradual discovery that someone else sees the world in a way that feels like recognition. By 17, we were inseparable in the way of teenagers who haven't yet learned that inseparable is a word that assumes a future. We stayed together through university. Different cities, manageable distance, the sustained effort of two people who have decided the thing is worth maintaining. After university, we were in the same city again. 5 years of building something shared. An apartment we spoke about. A future we spoke about constantly in the specific way of people who are very sure of each other. I bought the ring at 26. I want you to understand the specific weight of that decision. Not financially, though it cost more than I had comfortably. The weight of certainty. of having assessed the situation from every angle and arrived at the same answer every time. I showed my mother. I showed my father. I showed my best friend Travis. I showed my uncle. I showed everyone who mattered because I wanted the happiness of it to be shared before the moment itself. Everyone said the same thing. She's the one, of course she is. She worked in forensic investigation, the kind of work that occasionally required sudden departures a day, sometimes two, sometimes longer. I'd learned to receive these without anxiety. The first time it happened, I called 20 times in 4 hours. She'd called back eventually and laughed gently and explained, and I'd felt embarrassed by my own panic. After that, I learned. She had a job that required her to disappear sometimes. I had a partner I trusted completely. These two facts coexisted without friction. The Sunday she disappeared, I didn't call 20 times. I called twice and assumed she was on a job. By Monday evening, I was less sure. By Tuesday morning, I was calling hospitals. By Tuesday afternoon, I had filed a missing persons report. By Wednesday, I had hired a private investigator. By the following week, I had filed an RTI request with 3 government departments to locate any record of her whereabouts. I had contacted her employer, who told me, and the specific flatness of this still lands somewhere in me, that she had resigned a year prior. 12 months prior. She had resigned from her job a year before she disappeared. She had continued leaving for what I believed were work assignments. She had come home each time. She had been planning something for at least a year that I didn't know about. The PI found nothing. The RTI requests produced nothing. She had simply gone. Now that I think about it, it was foolish on my part to even try. She was used to such things as she worked for the exact service I paid for, so she was equipped with the right tools for countering me. But I was not in the correct headspace for that realization. I'm going to tell you what the 2 years after looked like as accurately as I can, because I think accuracy is important here, and because I've spent a long time trying to be honest about what happened to me rather than performing a version of it that's easier to describe. I stopped eating, not as a choice, as a cessation of something my body had forgotten how to do. My mother force-fed me soup for 2 weeks. I am not speaking metaphorically. I stopped bathing. I stopped leaving the house. I stopped answering my phone to anyone except the PI, who had nothing to tell me but who I called daily anyway, because the calling felt like doing something, and doing something felt like the only alternative to the other thing I was thinking about. The other thing I was thinking about. My family took shifts, my mother on weekdays, my father on weekends. Travis stayed for 3 weeks straight in my apartment, sleeping on the sofa until my mother insisted he go home and rest. My uncle came every Sunday. My aunt came twice a week to clean because the cleaning had stopped the same time everything else had. I was put on medication. I saw a psychiatrist. I was assessed twice for inpatient care, and twice the assessment concluded that the monitoring at home was sufficient. I want to say that again. I was assessed twice for whether I needed to be hospitalized to keep me safe. This is what Kavia's disappearance did to me. This is what they watched. Every single one of them. 2 years. That's approximately how long it took to get to something that resembled functional. Not the other side of it. I understand now that there is no other side, just a different relationship to the thing. But functional, capable of most ordinary things, capable of returning to work, capable of something adjacent to hope. My therapist is a woman named Dr. Shah, who I have been seeing for 14 years now across 2 distinct periods of crisis and several stretches of maintenance. She suggested the analyst work. She didn't suggest it directly. She suggested that I had an instinct toward control through information, and that finding a professional channel for that instinct might be useful. I found the channel. I met my wife now 2 years after Kavia disappeared. I want to be careful about how I describe Inau because she deserves care in the description. She is warm and precise and funny in the specific way of someone who has seen enough of the world to know what's worth laughing at. She is a good mother. She is a good partner. She has been, in the 14 years since we met, genuinely and consistently present in a way I didn't know I was looking for until I found it. When we met, I told her I had a history, that someone I had loved had died. I believed she had died. That is what I was told. That is what I understood the situation to be. I will come back to this, and that the grief of it had been significant and that I was still in the process of the longer recovery. She listened. She asked careful questions. She said she understood and that she wasn't going anywhere. We married 4 years later. Our daughter Lana is 7 years old. She is the realest thing in my life. I have to tell you what I know now that I didn't know then. Kavya didn't die. She didn't disappear. She left, deliberately, quietly, with planning and preparation that required her to resign her job in secret and arrange documentation and travel, and as I understand it now, a new name, a new history, a new life in a different country. With my brother, I don't have the full picture of how it started or when. I have pieces. I have what I've been able to reconstruct from the information available to me and from the conversations I forced with people who had been keeping this from me. What I know, my brother and Kavya began something before she disappeared. I don't know exactly when. I know that by the time she resigned her job, the plan was already in place. I know that my family, my parents, my aunts and uncles, Travis, others, were told what had happened within the first year of her disappearance. Some were told sooner. They were told while they were taking shifts to keep me alive. I want that to land properly. My mother was force-feeding me soup, and she knew. Travis was sleeping on my sofa for 3 weeks, and he knew. My uncle came every Sunday, and he knew. They held me through the worst thing that had ever happened to me while possessing the information that would have explained it. They chose not to give me that information because, and this is the reasoning I received when I finally confronted them, it would have made things worse. It would have made things worse. I have sat with that reasoning for 18 months. I am still sitting with it. The Wednesday, after I drove home, I sat with Anau, and I told her what I'd found. I want to describe her response because it matters. She didn't speak for a long time. She sat very still in the way she sits when she's processing something significant, not shut down, just absorbing. Then she said, "Tell me everything." So I did, everything I knew. Everything I'd understood to be true for 14 years, that Kavya had died during an investigation, that the body had never been recovered, that the circumstances were classified to some degree because of the nature of her work. This was the story I had been given, by my mother, by Travis, by my uncle, the story I had built my understanding of my own grief around. And now listen to all of it. Then she said something slowly, carefully, like she was handling something fragile. "I need to tell you something. Years ago, before we were serious, before we were even properly together, a message to her phone from an unknown number. She showed me the screenshot she'd kept. She'd kept it because it had felt strange and she'd meant to ask me about it, and then we'd become more serious, and she decided not to raise it because it seemed like it would hurt me and she was trying to be supportive. The message said, 'He's been through enough. Please don't dig into it, for his sake.' Unknown number, never messaged again. She had ignored it, filed it under strange things that didn't require action, forgotten it mostly until this moment. I looked at the message. I looked at my wife. I said, 'Someone knew about us before we were serious and sent you a message telling you not to ask questions.' She said, 'Yes.' I said, 'Someone was monitoring my new relationship and made a preemptive move to ensure you wouldn't ask questions that might lead somewhere.' She said, 'I think so.' We sat with that for a very long time. I tried to reach Kavya first. Social media search, found a profile under her new name, sent a message, was blocked within the hour. A restraining order arrived 4 days later, filed by my brother, citing harassment, citing my professional position as a potential threat to his family's privacy. My brother, who I had spoken to 3 weeks before on a video call about nothing in particular, and who had given no indication that he knew I had found anything. Someone had told him. The restraining order arrived before he called me directly. When he did call, 2 days after the order, his voice had the specific quality of someone who has been advised by a lawyer about what to say and is trying to stay within those parameters. He said I needed to stop. He said the family had made decisions that were difficult but were in everyone's best interests. He said I had a good life now and should focus on that. I said, "You were with her while I was being assessed for hospitalization." He said, "I think this conversation should stop now." He hung up. I drove to his UK address, the one on the loan application, the one that hadn't been approved yet, the one that was the reason this had surfaced at all. I found the office where he was based when visiting for the loan processing. I went to the reception and asked them to tell him his brother was there. Security escorted me out. Not violently, efficiently. The specific efficiency of security personnel who have been briefed about a specific person's potential arrival. He'd known I was coming. He'd prepared. I stood on the pavement outside the building. I stood there for a while. Then I went home. The confrontation with my parents was the one I'd been preparing for without knowing it. I went to their house on a Saturday morning. I sat at the kitchen table where my mother had fed me soup for 2 weeks, and where my father had sat across from me on Sunday mornings reading the paper while I stared at nothing, and where both of them had held me when I cried and told me it would get better, and said they were there and that they loved me. My mother offered tea. I said, "When did you know?" She looked at her hands. I said, "I'm not leaving until you tell me when you knew." My father said it was complicated, that the situation had been complicated, that they had been trying to protect me, that I had been in such a fragile state and the information would have. I said, "When did you know?" My mother said, 8 months. 8 months not after Kavya disappeared, before. Not 8 months into the soup and the shifts and the assessments, but when I was working to build something I was sure about, bought a ring for and shared with them, and they smiled at me, encouraged me while under it all they knew. What's more, they escalated it, now that I think about it. I didn't see the signs. I didn't need to because they were my flesh and blood. I was a fool. I sat with that number. I said, "You knew while you were taking care of me. While I stopped. While I was the way I was, you knew." My mother said, "We thought it would destroy you." I said, "You let me grieve a death that didn't happen. For 14 years, I built my understanding of my own history on a story you knew was false. I told my wife that story. I grieved something that wasn't true, and you watched me grieve it and you said nothing." My father said, "Matthew was." I said, "I know what Matthew was. The golden boy. The one who got the opportunities. The one whose choices were accommodated and managed and protected. I had known this my whole life in the way you know things that you've decided not to examine. I examined it now." I said, "I have one more thing to say and then I'm leaving." They looked at me. I said, "What you did, what all of you did, is not something I can absorb and continue from. I need you to know that I know everything. I need you to know that I'm not asking for an apology because an apology doesn't reach what this is. And I need you to know that I loathe you and I'm leaving. You won't see me ever in this life again, even though I think that won't change anything on your side end." My mother started to say something. I stood up. I walked out. That evening I wrote the message. One message, the same message sent to everyone. My parents, Travis, my uncle, my aunt, everyone who had known and kept it. And one final version sent to Kavya, whose number I had from the old days that probably didn't work anymore, but that I sent to anyway because she deserved to receive it even if she never read it. I'm not going to reproduce the message here. It belongs to the people it was sent to and to me, and to the specific evening I sat at my kitchen table and wrote it with an owl beside me, not reading it but present in the way she is present for the things that matter. What I'll tell you is that it said what needed saying, that it was not cruel, that it didn't ask for anything, that it was simply a record of what I knew and what it had cost and what I had decided. Written clearly, sent without drama, without waiting to see if anyone responded. I didn't wait for responses. I went to bed. Some things don't require a reply. They just require having been said. It's been 18 months since the Wednesday. We are moving, not far enough. A new city, new schools for Lana, a new office for me. I've changed my surname. Not back to anything, forward to something chosen. A name that is mine in a way that the previous one, which connected me to a family whose decisions about my life I am still processing, no longer felt like. Inau and I are working on it. I want to be honest about that because I think it would be dishonest to say we're fine. We're not fine in the clean sense. The revelation that the story of my previous relationship had been managed for her as well as for me, that she had been monitored, that she had received a message from someone ensuring she wouldn't ask questions, that she had been used as a tool in the same way I had been used as a subject. This has required its own processing. She is angry in her own way. At different people and at different things. We are in therapy together and separately. Dr. Shah has been very busy. What I can say is that the thing between us is real. Not because of where it started or what surrounded it, but because of what it has been in practice. The 14 years of showing up. The way she asked me to tell her everything on the Wednesday and stayed while I did. The way she showed me the message she'd kept without knowing why she'd kept it. The way she has been, in the 18 months since, genuinely on my side in a way that nobody else in this story has managed. She was lied to. So was I. We are building something now from what's actually true, rather than from the managed versions of our histories that were given to us by people who thought they knew better. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a lot. Lana asked me last week why we're moving. She's 7. She asks the questions 7-year-olds ask directly, without agenda, with the specific expectation that adults have real answers. I said we were starting something new. She said, "Is new good?" I thought about that. I said, "New is what we've got, and I think we're going to make it good." She accepted this with the complete pragmatism of a child who trusts you, and moved on to asking about whether the new house would have a garden. I told her it would have a garden. She said that was acceptable. She went back to what she was doing. I watched her for a moment. She is the realest thing in my life. Nobody arranged her. Nobody planned her. Nobody managed the conditions under which I came to love her. She just exists, and I love her completely, and that love is mine in a way that very little else in this story has been mine. I'm going to carry that.